What is going on, YouTube? It's Jam back with another video here to celebrate Resident Evil's 25th birthday. But before I do, all I want you to do is subscribe. Super easy. I would really appreciate it. And it's been a while since I've done a live video outside of War Never Changes. Although my health is still questionable, I do feel good enough today to celebrate this gem right here. Now, I have the original Resident Evil box. I bought this 25 years ago to this day. I was 14 years old. I just got into PlayStation gaming, and I remember picking this game up. Now, back then, and I suspect it's probably still this way, although I'm an old man now, because of the mature rating, I could not pick this up on my own. I had to have my mom go with me, and my mom actually bought it for me, even though I just stood there and watched. I didn't know at the time, and I don't think anybody knew at the time, just how bad this game was, but in a good way. Keep in mind, PlayStation had those super realistic polygon graphics, and it was a weird hybrid of these like beautiful painted backgrounds with these polygons over the top of them. And this game had beautiful surroundings, and the characters were very blocky, very pixelated, but the backgrounds were very meticulous. And back then, games didn't really do a good job of telling you what to do or where to go. So this haunted mansion experience, without really the use of a mini map or, you know, quest beacons of, like, think of Skyrim, like your mission is right here. They didn't exist in a game like this. So this really was a chore to get through in a good way. I think a lot of people ended up buying the companion book. I know I did, from, I think it was Brady Games. I remember it had the picture of the infamous picture on the inside here. Actually, I do have, we're actually going to look at this box together, but I remember the manual, the cover of the manual was this, of the walkthrough. And it was really a lot of fun because, you know, you kind of needed that, but you didn't want to necessarily use it. This spawned just a litany of Resident Evil games and experiences after this game, and it was a lot of fun. So I still have, like I said, I have the original game. Now, back then, PlayStation, I just took the manual out. The manual sits right in here. Back then, PlayStation gave you these little tiny pieces of foam to rest over. You could see some notches in there, and it rested over the case because a lot of times these manuals were just loosely put in there. Now, this one was actually nice, and it actually has clips. I don't know if you could see there's 4 clips here and here. It would slide in, but a lot of the games didn't have those, and the manual would just slop around, and they were nervous that the disc would get damaged. So what they did was they put that little tiny sponge in front of it, so it protected the game case. You may also remember that the original PlayStation discs were actually black. This was supposed to be some sort of copyright protection. I never tried to copy these games. I don't know, but yeah, so this was the case, man, and it was this giant case. It had the big plastic on the side, and then they taped the box art over it. You could see actually on mine, tape's a little bit loose. I mean, 25 years isn't bad. And then it had a little bit of description on the back of kind of what, you know, was going on in the game. Nobody really knew anything about, you know, this game when it came out. This really came out of absolutely nowhere, and it was just such a treat to play. Inside the manual here, very basic manual, but back then, if you remember, games did actually include manuals, so you would actually get a walkthrough of how to play, and it had a picture of the controller, and it had mappings to show you all of the various buttons that you had to press. Back then, we didn't have, if you notice on that controller, we didn't have analog sticks back then. This game was basically a tank. You know, you would circle and walk forward in a direction. There wasn't really any smooth analog controls at all. The only thing my manual is missing is the back little page here. You can see it's actually cut out. This is what you use to order the strategy guide back then. You couldn't order it in the bookstore, so you actually had to go to page 19 of the manual and cut out the page and mail it in as proof that you were entitled to the manual. Now, later on, they did ultimately open it up to the bookstores, but when it first came out, due to the demand, you had to actually have proof of the game, and the proof of the game was in the manual. So I unfortunately don't have the manual anymore. I did a big spring cleaning where I threw away a lot of my old guidebooks. And these are very readily available now. There's nothing unique about the actual like collector's edition guide anymore, because you don't need it. But what a piece of history. Now, Resident Evil, 25 years old, has gone through its fair share of ups and downs. I think we can all collectively agree Resident Evil 7 was absolutely a true return to form. I'm glad to see them going back and remastering 2 and 3. That was my first time actually playing through 2 entirely. I didn't get the remaster of 3 yet. Waiting for it to go on sale a little bit more because I still remember it, so I don't really necessarily need to dive back into it anytime soon. But, in celebration of Resident Evil's 25th birthday, we are starting to see more news come out. They had that live stream I covered. It was maybe a month or so ago. It was just a very short little video hosted by What's Good Games, Brittany Brombacher. She kind of walked through some of the news. We got to see our first hand-on impression of the new Resident Evil 8 Village game, which is still available to check out now. There's a free demo if you're a Sony pony. I think it's going to be coming to other platforms later. They're also going to have some new games coming out, later in the year, and they've been hyping that up as well. And they have a blog. I went through the blog. I didn't really see anything that really stood out to me. I don't think it was really worth diving through, other than Resident Evil Reverse will be going into open beta next month, but we'll talk about that when it comes out. But I just wanted to do today's video just as really a trip down memory lane to look at this. I had to go back up in the vault upstairs and dig this one out because it was really buried in the back. It just brought back so many memories of the first time going through that mansion and the really horrible dialogue that accompanied the game. Found out many years later, the game developers who had everybody record as voice lines were not native English speakers. So when they gave these scripts to the cast to read them, the cast were given no instructions of like, you're supposed to be scared or you're supposed to be happy, or they had no context of what they were recording. So they recorded each line multiple ways because they didn't know. So sometimes they were happy or scared or sad. And it was the game developers who, not native English speakers, listening to these clips, went back and pulled the ones they thought sounded the best. That's why the inflection is horrible in these games, because while they may have sounded well, they weren't really said correctly. That's why, like when Jill meets Barry and she's like, "Oh, Barry, where is Chris?" The people who were putting this game together didn't understand that. And you got some horrible cringy lines like Jill, the master of lockpicking, and there were some other very cringe-worthy moments, but it was such a treat to play. It was a mature game. There was death, there was zombies, there was blood, there was violence, and there was permadeath. You were limited to the number of saves. You had to be very smart about when you used those typewriter ribbons to save your game. And then on top of all of it, it had a really cool replayability to it, because after you beat the game once, you can go back and play it again with the other character. And while some of the puzzles were the same, there was a lot of divergence. Chris infamously gets the flamethrower where Jill does not. Chris's playthrough is a little bit harder. He has less inventory slots. Jill has a lot of assistance from Barry. You can really kind of rely on Barry a lot more than you should, particularly in the infamous shotgun room where the spike's coming down. Barry will come save you. Obviously, you can't do that with Chris. You have to do it on your own. So a lot of play differences there too, where it was a challenge to kind of go back and try it again. And there were speed runs available that if you could beat the game in a certain amount of time, you'd unlock special gear for your next playthrough. You can get Chris's Stars jacket. He had like this leather motorcycle jacket. Jill had a alternative costume as well. And it spawned so many things. I mean, Resident Evil is just such a staple franchise at this point, and it's like I said, it's gone through its ups and downs, but I am so grateful for picking this game up when I did, and I'm so grateful to be a fan. Here's 25 years to one of the coolest, weirdest games ever made, and here's 25 more to Capcom. Keep up the phenomenal work. Post some memories below of any crazy Resident Evil stories you have. I'd love to reminisce with you guys in the comments. With that, I'm shutting this video down. Thank you all so much for watching. Please take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.